Hello and welcome to another fun episode of the Utah Puck Report. Things just blowing up, man, and the show is blowing up. And if this is your first time listening or you're just joining us for the last couple weeks, welcome to season 8. We've been talking about hockey since before hockey was cool, according to Utah. Today, very special guest, Gabe Gauthier. I've known him for years and years. And Gabe, you're a hockey guy, right? Through and through.
Yes, I am. And first off, Jay, I want to thank you for your time inviting me onto your podcast, and thank you to the listeners. This is, like you said, exciting stuff. And for the hockey world, I'm stoked and more to talk about that with you here and share my experience, my knowledge, and more educate your listeners on the growth of hockey and the impact it has for the youth development.
Yeah, and you've had some really good experience with that. So before we get to that, let's just kind of talk about your pedigree and your hockey resume so that people have an idea of who you are and where you came from.
Yeah, so originally Southern California, born and raised in Torrance, grew up in Buena Park, played all my youth hockey up until the age of 13 years old. From there, it was a path, and I took a path where I went to a prep school back east, played at Berkshire Prep for my freshman year of high school. And then from there, was recruited or told to go play in the BCHL, which was the British Columbia Junior Hockey League at the time. And that was when I was a 15-year-old. And this is where my past brings knowledge, right? And I know you had Brandy Lewis on a previous podcast and talked about just the growth of youth hockey, but also the path. And that's where I had to leave home at a young age. Southern California did not have the hockey to really market itself to be a national contender. There was a group of kids. That was my group, that 80s to 84 group of birth years. And from there, played in Chilliwack in the BCHL for 3 years. We won 2 BCHL championships, went to 2 Royal Bank Cups. And then from there, played at the University of Denver, got a scholarship, athletic scholarship to play for the University of Denver. That itself, a whole nother path, being recruited by major colleges. I narrowed it down to Michigan State, Boston University, and then Denver. And Seth Appert was the assistant coach at the time.
Seth,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I love too, Jay, is right. Like we first met 10 years ago coaching each other, but just the hockey world continues to thrive. But Seth, and he knows this too, because we were texting a few months ago, just the relationship he built with me as a player, as a recruit, and then with my family. So it really wasn't recruiting. He was building a friendship. And to be honest, that was the deciding factor of why I chose to go to the University of Denver. Because of 3 things. It was, they wanted me, they needed me, and they were going to do everything to help me succeed. And
it's awesome. Because I was going to ask, like, that's obviously a good question, is like, what if you're lucky enough to have all those schools talking to you, which I don't know what that's like. I talked to like 3 teams. It was like Navy, and they're like, "Oh, we want you because you're probably desperate enough to come here and realize you're not going pro, but your grades aren't good enough." And then, like Alaska or whatever. So to have the choice of all the big names, like somebody has to really step up and make either the training facility has to blow you away or the coaching staff has to blow you away.
Yeah. And so I'll talk about that because I was blown away three different times. So my recruiting trip to Michigan State was the very first one. And this was back it was 2000. So the Cold War, it was the very first outdoor game, collegiately, right, where Michigan played Michigan State. And that was my recruiting weekend trip. So from a hockey perspective, your eyes are like a deer in the headlights, and you're watching history, being made. Camilleri, I believe, won that game in an overtime, which is crazy, like 24 years ago. But that was awesome because you're in the moment, you're in that feeling of being a top recruiter, a top athlete for a big time school. But the thing there was the talk of, we're not sure if we play our freshmen, or where the opportunities you're going to have. There's also the talks of a coaching change at that time, right? So it just wasn't the right feeling, even though I was blown away by watching that outdoor game, right? It was awesome to see the guys walk in front of 100,000 fans. Boston University, walking into history. Just as a hockey fan, collegiately, NHL, just in general, just the back east has so much history in hockey. And so Boston University was an amazing recruiting trip in itself. And Jack Parker, I remember, was the coach back then. He flew out to where I was in Buena Park, right? He flew out to California to meet with me and my family as a recruit. And you talked about, like, is it the coaching staff? Is it the dressing room? And so that was a huge impact, to have the head coach fly across the country to meet with me and my family, to show that, again, they wanted to have me at that school. And to be honest, the deciding factor there was just, again, my gut. I was coming from Chilliwack, which was a smaller town, about 35,000 people at the time. And it was a hockey community. And so then going to Boston, right, where it was a bigger city, the buildings really melded into each other. So it's like, you didn't know if that was a dorm room or a dorm facility, or if it was the classes, right? So for me, I was kind of out of my comfort zone, and then you walk into the dressing room and they have a jersey made for you. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool, right? So then Denver was the last trip. Denver was the last trip where I walked in, and this is where, from a player's perspective, it was the awe, right? They had a jersey made already. Number 9 Gauthier was hanging in the dressing room. And at the time, Denver just got a brand new facility. So the Ritchie Center was just constructed in late 99, 2000. So it was brand new. So at the time back then, it was like the Taj Mahal, right? It was what every dressing room wanted to be, until North Dakota came around. But it was then the feeling of being part of a team, right? I knew 3 of the guys already on the team that were from Chilliwack. So Wade Dublitz, Greg Keith were 2 main factors in that as well. So I already had that relationship. And then, of course, Seth Appert, made that choice easier, and where it felt like a family. It was a smaller school. And like I said, they wanted me, they needed me, they were going to do everything to help me succeed. And it proved to be that way. So it was,
you're part of the back-to-back national champs, right?
Yes, I was. So in 2004 and 2005, we now, so looking back, we've started a legacy, in college hockey. So back then it was coming from Minnesota, right, and East Coast hockey in Michigan, and it now moved west, where we knocked off some of the top teams as really a no-name school. And it started really the year before I got there, which kind of created the excitement. But that 2001 class of the University of Denver lost a heartbreaker in the finals to go to the Frozen Four, where they were slated to be the favorites. And then back in 2003, 2004, when we won, we were really the underdogs. Like, no one expected us to win. We had, one of the worst records for a championship team.
Wow.
But I will tell you this, Jay, and this will be this could be a whole nother segment for another time, which I believe they're working on a book or a movie because of the things that happened that year, circumvented the glory of that championship. And it all revolved around Keith Magnuson, who is a former Denver Pioneer, played for the Chicago Blackhawks, and was tragically killed in a car accident back in 2003. And so from that moment, the University of Denver hockey team just had something change.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's a whole nother segment, but that year really was a year that almost like we shouldn't have won, right? But we just pulled something out of our hats, and Adam Burkle in net, with Matt Carl on the back end, and Ryan Caldwell, like two big guys that were standing tall with Matt Latch, and it just, we had guys that bought into the team and bought into the system, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that team. And then, to be honest, the second year, we were just that good.
Yeah. And you switched.
Yeah.
That second year was Peter Menino, right? You guys
Correct.
had. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
the goalie switch.
Yep. So it went from Adam Burkle to then Peter Menino, freshman, coming in and just being lights out. Just lights out. And this is where, if you talk to any hockey guy, be it if you're new listening to this podcast, the common theme for any championship club is the goalie, right? The gag rule, get a good goalie. And you know this too, Jay, right? Is you can build your team around that goalie, because in the playoffs, you're going to need them to make those big saves. And you're going to also need them to make the casual save. But that's where Adam Burkle, Peter Menino, back-to-back, were just lights out from a goaltender perspective. And then we had the offensive firepower. Yes, myself, Paul Stastny, Ryan Dingle, Luke Fulgham, Kevin Ulansky, Drummond. Like the names back then were just offensive powerhouses. It didn't matter what night, Jay. We knew we were going to win. We just had that feeling that it was either going to be that line or this line. They were going to get it done. And we just had that feeling, knowing we were going to win. And that championship year in 05 was great, right? Because we accomplished something that we were set out to do. And
no, it's funny. It's funny to go from one year being the underdog to the next year just being like, we're just going to do it again. Like,
yeah,
we know now what it takes, and we know we have all the right pieces. And again, with the goaltender, with one graduating and one coming in, you're like, well, we pretty much know we have all the pieces, and we don't know much about Menino. And the funny thing is, so Peter and I are good friends, and I he's been on the show a bunch. And my other really good friend, and a lot of times co-host, is Jordan Parisi.
Oh, yes.
So it's funny to have them on together, because the victim of you guys being so phenomenal that year was North Dakota.
Yeah.
Right? What was that? Yeah, it was the second year, right?
It certainly was, yeah. And so fortunately for Jordan, I didn't score on him in critical games. But there was the 1 year where we won the WCHA Red Baron Championship, and we played North Dakota, and this was like, for any college hockey fan, you know the rivalries that go on, and North Dakota and Denver has been going on for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
It's just it's because of the pedigree of players, but it's also where they're recruiting from, right? And it's a lot of Western Canadian guys that are being recruited from Denver and North Dakota. So they're coming from juniors, right? So the BCHL, the AJHL, and that's where that animosity was coming from, right? Is just all of that tension accumulating. But long story short is that year, we won in overtime, beat North Dakota. I had the game winning goal. I put it right over Philip Lamoureux. His glove hand, like 15 seconds into the overtime. And then we went on to beat North Dakota in the championship 4-1. And that was awesome. Just knowing we just dominated all year. Because the year before, to be honest, it was North Dakota. They were the number one team all year long. We beat them 1-0 in the regional finals, right? To go to the Frozen Four. And it was just it was a great feeling. And the thing though too, Jay, is like with Jordan, with all these guys, like that was good hockey. Like really, like I said, it was our year just by luck to get to those certain points. The game that we beat North Dakota to go to the Frozen Four, right? It was all a matter of a shot that just went off the stick of one of our guys and then, trickled over the shoulder. Like it was one of those games where like you're just like, you never know who's going to win. And it's like any goal or the next goal is going to win. And it happened to be that one. Right.
Yeah. Cause I don't remember the roster that much, but I know that they had Jordan Parisi, Zach Parisi, Drew Stafford,
yeah,
Brady,
Brady Murray,
Brady Murray. Yeah. Eddie Murray's
Bansky,
good. Yeah. I mean, phenomenal players. Like a bunch of them went on to play in the NHL or played
yeah,
really big
Matt
hockey.
Green, Matt Smaby.
Yeah, I've got some stories about Matt Green too.
Yeah.
But I got to go to a lot of those games. I was an
Yeah.
equipment rep then, and already really close with the Parisis, and then I got to be really good friends with Peter through Seth actually.
Yeah.
Seth introduced me to Peter because I was the Brian's rep too at the time. So, all right. So college, then do you get drafted or do you go as a free agent to?
Yeah, undrafted. So signed with LA as a free agent.
And how cool is that as a California kid?
It was awesome, man. And this is where we'll kind of go back, have a flashback of getting started in California. Like I said, I'm an 84 birth year. So Gretzky, right? The famous trade. If you're going to talk about like sports moments, that was the sports moment when Bruce McNall, made that trade to get Gretzky and his group of guys to come over. McSorley, Curry, it was cool. But what it did, Jay, is it started a movement of youth hockey, and I got into roller and ice at the same time. So growing up, I was never fortunate enough to have a pond. I had gravel and rollerblades, right? And so I would always vision that I was playing at the Great Western Forum. I was playing on a line with Gretzky and Robitaille and Curry and all that stuff. And, that's what got my fire going, is watching those guys play, watching those games at the Great Western Forum. My dad would drive, an hour and 15 minutes from Buena Park to Los Angeles and Inglewood. And we had season tickets from 89 all the way until like 96 or so. So we were at that game when Wayne Gretzky broke the 802 goal scoring record from Gordie Howe. So it was just an awesome feeling. And as a kid, I always dreamt about playing for the Kings, right? Going on the street with my rollerblades, it was, Gabe Gauthier and the Los Angeles Kings. And then, I'd always announce myself going out and, just emulating that feeling. And it was awesome because every kid at that age was doing the same thing, right? It grew a market into now, like the Southwest is a hockey hotbed, and
that's unreal.
It's awesome to see. But then growing up with the Kings and then signing as a free agent with them, yeah, it was one of those dream come trues. My brother ended up he got a tattoo of the Kings logo because we've always been a Kings fan. And then I signed with the Kings. My first game was in Dallas. I got called up to play when a couple guys got hurt. But first game was against Dallas, faced off against Mike Modano.
Jeez.
Yeah, we lost that game in overtime. But I got to see the magic of Mike Modano skate. Like it was just in awe to see him pick the puck up from behind the net. It was overtime, and he was skating along the boards, cut across the blue line, and just flicked a wrister. Like like a 75, 80-mile-an-hour wrister, just flicked it, and that was it. So it was awesome. But yeah, to be able to play with the Kings was a dream come true, and I had that cup of coffee with them, 8 times in my career, and majority of it was in Manchester. But being able to play professional hockey, Jay, was, I still look back and I'm like, it was awesome, but I'm like, man, I could still do more, or I could have done more, and I want to do more.
It's funny. So one, I want to get back to tie you in more with Utah. I want to touch a little bit more about Manchester in the time, but what you just said, one of the cool parts about working for KSL Sports is that for a while, my desk was in between an NFL, at least a Utah legend, but Scott Mitchell, and I sat by Thurl Bailey and like all these NFL and NBA players. And one day I was helping Scott. We had just done this Hall of Fame induction for him at the University of Utah. And, I was a guy that was never making it, or I was on the bubble and knew that I didn't really belong there. But to go from being me and my experiences and just being like, I want to do more. I'm so like, I just want something. Let me do it. It used to be I just wanted to play in a game that had the national anthem because we never had that in Utah.
Right.
And that's what I wanted. And then to sit next to Scott Mitchell, who'd played, 12, 15 years in the NFL. I don't know what it was, but he had a long career. Yeah, made tons and tons of money. And then he's like, all of a sudden one day it's just over. Like I wasn't ready for it to be over. The contract was coming up, and you go from being a very well-paid NFL starting quarterback to I can't even get a job as a backup or as, a practice squad guy. And he's like, you're never ready. Even if it's injury or even if it's like so few people get to say, you know what, I've done enough. I feel like I've hit all my goals and I've given everything I can give, and it's given back to me. And it just seems like whether it's 8 games like you or 14 years or whatever, it's just like I still want to be there. I worked my whole life to be there.
Yeah.
And it is, you don't take it for granted. That's one thing I've noticed with NHL players for sure and I keep telling the other media this, and I'm not trying to belittle NBA players, but an interview as a media person with an NBA player compared to an interview with an NHL player is unbelievable. The difference is that every NHL player I've ever dealt with is just thankful to be there and they just want to be there still. And it's not, and they get the media part and they get that it's all part of like everything that's contributing to keeping them in the NHL. And it's just, you say you thought you had a lot more to give, and it's just funny to hear it come from somebody like Scott Mitchell, and then Thurl Bailey chimed in, same thing. They weren't done.
Yeah. You're spot on. And the thing is, it's a mindset, right? And the mindset is you're just preparing for that next day. You're preparing for that next game, right? So you're really not thinking about like, what am I going to do these next 5-10 years after I'm done playing, right? Your mindset is, how do I prepare for that next game, right? The famous Bill Belichick is, we got to move on to Cincinnati, or we got to move on to the next team, the Eagles, right? That's that mindset of just move on to the next day. And when it stops, you're like, where am I going?
Oh, well, yeah.
And to be honest, this is where, like you and I have now come back together, is like finding that identity, right? And as a former player and being involved in youth hockey, it's like, what is my identity? What am I here to do to bring back the game? And like you mentioned, just a hockey player's mentality is to always give back to the game that gave us all of these fortunate things in our lives. and to work for it, right? To know that the game is not just there for you, is you have to work for it. You have to be part of a team. You have to learn to overcome adversity. You have to work collaboratively with people you tend, to not like, but you respect. And then from there, when it stops, you're like, okay, what do I do next? And so this is where, as a former player, I'm finding my identity. It's being involved in the game to give back, to educate those families that this game is amazing. It is an amazing sport. Not only if you're going to play it on ice, if you're going to play it on roller, if you're going to play it on floor, right? The whole concept of hockey just breeds family, breeds community, and I'm just excited to now bring more of my knowledge to youth hockey, and especially from a Southern Utah perspective.
Yeah. I was just going to touch real quick, but maybe we should get onto the Southern Utah stuff. But for those, you were in Manchester when Trevor Lewis was there.
Yeah.
Utah's one of two. Well, Daniel Brickley had some time in the NHL. He got a few games with the Kings, just like you. But we have Steve Konowalchuk, and now we have Trevor Lewis, and you got to be there when he was a rookie and see him get called up and be there for that. So
sweet Lou.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
And man, I've it's no secret, I've known him forever, and we're just so proud of him. But man, his dad is just such a great person, and has
Humble.
been humble, and he's just always been so giving for the sport here. Like so many people here, they're just whatever you need. So then you were in Vegas. That's where you and I kept crossing paths. I was coaching Ogden, you were coaching Vegas, or I was coaching the Eagles or something. I don't remember. But you
Yes.
were coaching the Vegas Storm. And you were there, and you were part of when the Knights came in. You were there for all the transition. So you're very familiar with what's going on in Utah right now.
Absolutely. And so when I retired from playing, I got a random call, and this is where the hockey world, Jay, you know it, all your listeners know it, is never burn a bridge, right? Yeah. Never burn a bridge, because I got a random call back then from Roy Henderson, and he goes, "Hey, would you want to move to Vegas?" And this was back in 2013, right? And looked at my wife, and we're like, what's out in Vegas? He goes, "Well, there's hockey. There's a program that needs rekindling. There's a market that has been basically decimated for youth hockey, and they're going to be bringing a junior team to the Western States Hockey League." So I'm like, oh man, this is great opportunity, right? It was an easy transition from being a player as a radio commentator as well when I was injured to then coach it, right? To be a director. And I learned a lot of great things, not only from hockey perspective, but business perspective. And you're right. I saw the starting and the transition of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Vegas Junior Golden Knights. So my position was the youth hockey director. I was in charge of all of youth hockey in Las Vegas, and that was running in-house programs, skating, learn to skate programs, learn to play hockey, travel programs. And this was where the landscape in Vegas, Jay, back then, a lot of the players that were playing at a high level didn't have a place locally to continue to build their talent. And so they had to leave. And that's where they were coming up to Utah. And at the time there was the Renegades, right. And a couple other AAA programs. Then there was the Junior Kings, the Junior Ducks in California, the Coyotes, and the Bobcats down in Arizona. And so that's where they wanted to sustain that market and keep the kids locally to know that, hey, this is going to be affordable and you're going to get great coaching. You don't have to leave, right? And that's one of the things too. And as the education of hockey gets into, it's like going certain places. No, you don't. You get the development, right? And even at a professional level, you can never be the best skater. You can never be the best puck handler. You can always be better. And that's where I brought in that education to youth hockey. And it was the 06s. It was that birth year that was development. It was focusing on skating. It was focusing on the puck development, the awareness on the ice, and then allowing those kids to make those decisions on their own, right? So it's playing in small areas. And this is where the ADM model by USA Hockey has been developed, right? Originally came from Europe and Finland. And it rings true to the game of hockey because it's played right in those different sections, those small areas. You have to win those little board battles. You have to win that little one-on-one battle to then advance the puck. And so bringing that education to a non-traditional market at the time started to build awareness. And then we also had the junior team where kids were aspiring to play at that level, right? To know that they had a competitive level of hockey after high school or after their U16s. And from there, it created another path to either play college, right? Or, to play in the beer league, because eventually we're all going to be playing in the beer league. It's just a matter of, when that is, right?
Yeah. I just want to, like the last 3 or 4 episodes, we've talked about ADM and I've talked about how much I believe in it. And then I've been getting some emails. I'm going to just say this on the show real quick too. KSL has a ridiculous firewall when it comes to emails. So I'm only getting about 3% of the emails. We just found this out yesterday morning. So, the ADM, can you, like, I can explain it, but I think it'd be better to just, can you do 2 minutes and explain it and what it is and why it is and what ADM stands for?
Yeah. So just bringing it together, the American or advanced development model, right, is making sure that kids are touching the puck more, they're on the ice, and they're being creative, right? And it's the same kind of concept from a teaching perspective, right? At a young age, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? The basics, and building those basics foundationally to then sustain an athlete. And that's where, if you're playing in the NFL, NHL, MLS, they're all athletes. Yes, they're specified in that sport, but everyone at that elite level is a natural athlete. And so that's where the American development model, or the advanced development model for hockey, is building athletes, but then also building a way for kids to have fun, to create more excitement. Because at the time, if you think about it, the size of the ice, right, 200 by 85, is too big for U6 and U8 players.
Yeah.
And that's where they were doing, and this is where analytics really became important into the game, right, into the 2000s. And it started to see that kids were not touching the puck. Kids weren't having fun. They weren't developing at the rate that European hockey players were developing. And so things had to change, right? And that's where the ADM model started to focus in on small areas. And so in a nutshell, you section the ice into quadrants or into sections, and you focus in on individual skills that pertain to the overall gameplay, right? So you have a station of edges and skating. You have a station of puck control. You have a station of 2-on-2 awareness, right? You have a station of read and react. And so it's all of those areas that build the mindset of an athlete through the game of hockey. And I absolutely love it because it allows those kids to now get on the ice at an early age, but then it gives them that opportunity to be successful when they should be.
Yeah, these kids, these small kids that have been playing on this big ice are now playing on ice that's size appropriate. And even their games are these 3-on-3 cross ice, which you know as well as I do, because you've been coaching way longer than I have. And I was lucky to get out of it I mean, I loved it. I loved it. But man, the parents were getting worse and worse. And like we started the 3-on-3 stuff with the little guys, and parents were just complaining. I'm like, look how many more times they're touching the puck.
Yeah.
Look how many more times they get to do stuff. And I go back every time I think about stuff, I just think about stuff JP Parisi told me. And he said, coaches should just stay out of the way for so long. Let them go and let them develop the passion for the game. Put them on the ice, point them the right way. Don't coach them. Like don't like teach them the skills, teach them how to skate, teach them how to hold a stick maybe. And now maybe there's even some conflict with that too, right? Because Bedard shoots different than everybody else, the way he holds the stick and shoots. But let them figure it out, and they'll show you stuff you've never seen before, and their passion will develop. And then when they get older, 14, 16, whatever, bring them to the coaches, and then let the coaches teach them systems or whatever.
Structure.
But yeah, and a lot of parents are like, no, we got to win. And you'll see posts all the time, like after a 10U game, they're like, devastating loss to whatever. You're like, no, it was fun.
Yeah.
Win, lose, they're 10. They had fun. Don't worry about the wins and losses. Just please let them play.
Yeah. All the, and this is, here's teaching. And this is for me, I love it, a teaching point, right? It has nothing to be mad. Like, don't take this the wrong way, parents. It's just a teaching point, is that all the kids really care about is being with other kids and then snack time after.
Yeah.
You know, because it's giving them that environment to interact, right? To mentally develop with their own, right? And that's where having a facility to do that, and you touched on it, and having a 3-on-3 size rink is appropriate to get that started, right? To have those kids start to develop playing with one another, right? To overcome different conflict, but to communicate when you don't have an outside distraction, you know? And like JP said, an awesome guy. He recruited me to go to Shattuck in Minnesota as a 13-year-old, right? Is to have fun, to smile, to have fun. And again, thank your parents for bringing you, right? And that's it. Like, just go there and have fun, and then thank your parents for bringing you.
All right, so now you've got all this experience. You've been coaching. You got to see the transition in Las Vegas, and now all of a sudden you're headed to Utah. What's going on with that? Like, start from the beginning and tell us all because you've got a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, started really in Vegas, and there was a group, Chad Fain and his wife Kelly Fain at the time, or Carrie, were putting together the Yeti program, right? And so that is the youth and enthusiasts together for ice, and they started in St. George at the Dixie Igloo, right? And then from there started to establish the KJ's Ice Barn in Enoch.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is huge because it's going to be the first in-ground ice facility in southern Utah, where the igloo before was just a temporary, as a pop-up rink. And so what they've done is been able to establish an amazing community within Cedar City, Enoch, and also in St. George to put together KJ's Ice Barn. And so when I was in Vegas, I was working with Cedar City from a high school perspective, right? To get exhibition games with Cedar City High School. And then we had the Las Vegas Storm High School team, which is again now blown up into Bishop Gorman having a team, Faith Lutheran have a team. That's another story in itself. But working with Chad, it was awesome because we were able to give those kids an experience in Las Vegas of playing outdoors in Cedar City, right? It was an awesome experience to grow the game. And so from my mindset, I'm like, man, St. George that area is going to be the next area, right? This place needs youth hockey because it's 4.5 hours from Salt Lake. It's 2 hours from Vegas. And it's just another market for the game to grow and for kids to have an opportunity to play an awesome sport. And so way before the announcement that Ryan bought the team, I've been working with Chad Fain, and Sherry Rudd and Chad's daughter Alyssa to help them in this process, from a consulting perspective to help them, advising as far as programming, because I want to make sure everything is successful from a hockey mindset, right? Is doing things the right way, giving an opportunity for the game to grow. Because I was fortunate enough to experience it in California, and I've now seen what it's done for the sport, and being an ambassador to the game of hockey. That's where I had a calling. I had a calling that the game needed me to help grow in Southern Utah. So what I'm going to be doing for KJ's Ice Barn is putting together a hockey camp. We tentatively have that set for the beginning of August. But just to give you a little more on KJ's Ice Barn is they're set to have everything up and running mid-July. So in Enoch, they're going to have an ice rink. They're going to have pickleball courts, and a facility for high school kids, for youth, and start building a program, which will then eventually, continue to grow and migrate into St. George, which is where my venture project is going to also be a part of building youth hockey, is starting learn to skate programs, starting learn to play programs, getting adults on the ice as well. And this is another thing too, Jay, that was amazing in Las Vegas, was building a learn to play adult program. And that grew the numbers tremendously because it allowed those parents to see now eye to eye, right, what those kids are seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put
So,
your money where your mouth is, Dad.
it was awesome, because it now it humbled everyone, right? Because so we talked about this earlier in our segment, is the hockey players and their mentality, and it's humble, right? It's humbling because you can't just pick up a pair of skates and go and skate and be good at it. It takes time, right? It takes effort, and it takes that mindset to push through. And so having the learn to play for the adults really embrace that mentality. But then too, Jay, from a perspective as a coach, it now created more coaches, right?
Oh, yeah.
It allowed them to see the game differently as a parent coach versus just being a parent. And so this is where my goal is to build that recognition, to build that community of skaters, of hockey players, both young and adult. And of course, building the girls game, which is huge, with the PWHL now entering playoffs as well too. And Alyssa Fain is working with the Lady Grizz. So these are all areas that I have experience working with from a hockey perspective, but I also know that this is a part of the country that needs that support. Not
What
only
a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, what an amazing for us. Like, it's great for you that you happen to be in the right place at the right time. But
Right.
as a Utah hockey guy, the enthusiast or whatever, what an amazing turn of events to have a person of your qualifications and skills and history. You've already done it before. It's like every startup company goes out and they try to find some guy that was part of a startup company that knows what it's like to wear 5 different hats and do all the work. And all of a sudden, we announced today that the Miller Group is putting a huge, not the Miller Group, the Smith's Entertainment Group is putting a brand new hockey facility in Sandy.
Yeah.
And they said that's one of several communities they're looking at. And it's obvious with all the growth that St. George has to be one of them. And then all of a sudden, there's Gabe Gauthier with 2 national championships, 8 games in the NHL, and also has already done the startup of hockey. So man, it's just like talk about things falling into place. Like
Absolutely.
we're just lucky to have a guy like you around that area.
Well, I appreciate it, humbly, and that's where, again, for me personally, it's to see the game expand. And I've talked to numerous people in Utah already about objectives, right? And the objective is to educate and to give families that opportunity to know how great this game really is. And the opportunities it allows kids to build friendships and long-lasting relationships, right? Because I picked up the phone and called you and you answered, right? And I picked up the phone and made a call to Jordan Parisi, and then he's like, hey, you got to talk to Jack Skilly, right? And then you got to call Kevin McCloskey, and then you got to do this and all that, right? And it's like we just build this community of friends and networks, and yeah, we clash, at times, but that's the competitive nature of being human, but also being a competitor, right? And that's why I love this game, and I want to continue to give that back to everyone in Utah, and especially continuing to build upon what the Fanes have started, and what KJ's Ice Barn is continuing to grow.
So that's a full-size facility?
So so it's gonna be not full size. I believe it's 180 by 85. So
Good enough.
yeah, so it's perfect size for junior team and below, right? So it's not an NHL size, not NHL size rink, but is completely adequate for U20 and below, where I believe they are going to be having a junior team in the USPHL. So more details on that will be coming out as far as like the contract solidification there. But that's going to be huge, and that's the same thing we did in Las Vegas. Was we had that junior team of 18, 19, 20-year-olds of talented hockey players from North America and also from Europe, right? Playing other talented players, and that's where the kids are seeing that and giving an opportunity to grow and be a part of a great community.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. And that starts in July. And I think I saw it. I just drove through the other day. I was driving to Vegas and I looked, and you could see where the rink is. And it looks like it's gonna, at least I thought I saw where the rink was. I'd like to get some pictures if you guys have them, and we'll put them up on KSL's website and talk about it, because that's another sheet. McCloskey's building another sheet up above Park City. And it's just amazing, man. It's just amazing that all the things falling into place right now, and hockey's just buzzing right now in Utah.
It certainly is. And no, I'll send you more information you can put in the show notes for your listeners. About KJ's Ice Barn, and then my wife and our daughter, we're actually heading up to the St. George, Cedar City, Enoch area this weekend. So we're going to be going and looking at some places, the high schools, because my daughter, she's a high school volleyball player. So she's not playing hockey. So she watched a video, unfortunately, of the one that I got hurt in. And so she's like, I don't feel like playing hockey and getting hurt. So that's fine. But it's great. She's got her own path. But yeah, we're going to be up there this weekend. So we're going to be meeting with Chad and Sherry and Alyssa. I'll take some pictures, video, send them over to you as well on the updates. And then I'm going to be talking to some other people in St. George from another hockey perspective, which could be another segment for you, is the ball hockey. So there's the Red Rock ball hockey in St. George, where they've been established for now 2 years playing ball hockey. So I'm going to be meeting with Corey and Doug from that group as well too.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm a roller hockey guy. That's the only way I got any recognition, is I just happened to get to play professional roller hockey. And that's when people are like, well, maybe we'll give you another shot at ice hockey, because I really didn't have anything else on the table. So
was that in the RHI?
Yeah, in the RHI. I'm a big fan in Las Vegas.
That's sweet.
Yeah,
That's
Las
awesome.
Vegas Flash.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm a big proponent of roller hockey, and it's another thing that I've been bringing in front of Smith Entertainment Group. Is I keep talking to him. I said, hey, uh, we all these ice facilities are great, but it's we're good friends with Sport Court, based out of Utah, invented here in Utah. We could throw them down anywhere. James Burdett, who's been on the show a few times and was a Salt Lake roller bee, from the RHI.
Yeah,
He runs, or I don't know if he runs, but he's one of the head execs at Sport Court now. So maybe that's something we need to work out too, and get you guys a nice floor out there and some boards, and make
definitely.
something happen. I know you've got some other ice things going and stuff too, and like,
Yeah,
there's so many ways to make connections, and I hopefully we can all put some more stuff together and get St. George on the map and Cedar on the map and
yeah,
connect it. How amazing would
absolutely.
that be?
Say
Like,
that
just
again.
how amazing would that be to
It
have
would be awesome.
like a couple high school teams out of St. George, one out of Cedar City, Vegas, Salt Lake. Let's throw Provo in the mix, obviously, and you've just got that's wall to wall hockey.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is hockey, right? And one of the things too, and like you talked about with Smith Entertainment Group, is growing the game. Growing the game of hockey is how do you do that? How do you build it? There's so many different ways. But the biggest thing is getting a stick in a kid's hand, right? Whether it's a ice stick, a roller, stick where there's some that have different blades, right? Or there's hockey ball, right? Or floor ball, which is another concept that I'm working with as an ambassador of hockey ball, where Greg Bodine, and this is an unbelievable story. Greg Bodine from hockey ball, he's based in Surrey. His dad is the original Jet. And everyone's like, well, what's the original Jet? Well, all you true hockey fans will know that the Utah franchise is the original Winnipeg Jet franchise, which moved, right? And so Bodine was the original Jet, signed in 1972. And he now is working with hockey ball out of BC. They've already partnered with 6 NHL teams, and I'm going to be working with Greg, as I mentioned, as another ambassador to the game of hockey for hockey ball, and helping grow the sport of hockey. And like I mentioned, it doesn't matter where you are. If you have a stick in your hand, you can play the sport, you can play the game, and it's a lot of fun. And this is where I'm working with a lot of people to bring ice hockey, roller hockey, hockey ball, floor hockey to Southern Utah, and have fun building another great sport.
Well, that's amazing. And I reached out to Warrior last week, and I just said, hey, we've got a lot of growth going on. We just need some gear.
Yeah,
And they're like, hey, let us know. Well, they're trying to figure out ways to help us too. And I'm sure other hockey groups would have, but as a former rep from Warrior, I just knew those guys would pitch in, because it's the same thing. And yeah, maybe in their business model somewhere down the line they make money back, but they're willing to sacrifice some now to
yeah,
help grow the sport here. And I think that'll work in your advantage too. And we'll just start getting sticks and get everything out. And I know SEG, they it only makes sense for them to help grow the game, and nobody gets that more than the guy that bought the Jazz and took them from 35,000 to 70,000 junior Jazz players. They get it.
yeah,
So I'm excited. And I can ramble on for hours about how excited I get about what's about to happen in this state, because I freaking love Utah.
yeah,
I think, and I for so long I thought I was gonna have to move again, because if I retire fire, I thought, well, I'll just go move to Vegas and work for the Knights because I want to be involved in hockey.
right.
Or just so many times I thought, I love Utah and I love hockey. Which do I love more? Well, now it doesn't matter. And I think there's thousands of people in that same category.
Yeah, I agree, man. And this is where, for my wife and I, it's like, why St. George? And I said this has been on our radar for a while, not only from a hockey perspective, but just throughout my career. We've lived in so many different places, right? We've lived in back east, New Hampshire, New York. We've lived in California, Colorado, Victoria, British Columbia. I had a year in Germany, right? So we've lived in every possible climate, that we could. And this is where the landscape of the West, you can't beat it. And then the climate of the southwest of southern Utah is where we're like, that's where we got to be. And with that too, Jay, is the great thing about what I'm working on is if things work out the way they are, we could potentially have a sheet of ice up in St. George somewhere the size of a 3-on-3 facility, which would be perfect for U6, U8 kids learning how to skate, learning how to get that feel of a stick in their hand. And then also creating a lot of fun for adults where, you know, you're playing a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4, like pond hockey, right? So you don't even need goalies. You're just playing pond hockey style and having fun learning how to skate, because you can then go up to Cedar City and Bryan Head and skate on the ponds there during the wintertime.
What's it going to take to get that 3-on-3 up? What do you need? A facility, money? Like, if we
Yeah.
got people that are downloading this episode, maybe they have resources. What do you need?
Yeah. So to be honest, the funding.
Yeah.
We have everything else working with Ice America, have a rink. I've been working with my uncle putting together the business plan as far as, you know, profit and loss, what would rinks be doing with size rink, etc. And then that's where going to St. George this weekend to establish more relationships with the community, but then also to see an area, right? What area would be good to put a rink there, if it's going to be an outdoor pop-up, because with a portable you can put an outdoor with a structure, or if it's going to be an indoor facility like at a convention center, right? But that's where it would be, just putting the funding together and getting a place set up, and then from there I have the rest.
Okay. All right. Well, I know this is the first time of what I think is going to be a lot of times having you on the show. I think it'd be fun to get all of us on the show, me, you, Jack, Jordan,
Yeah.
and get a group of us and just really talk this through. And I know SCG is going to do amazing things, and I think that one way or another, it's going to affect you guys and help you guys get your vision through. So they're going to need people like you to plug into these holes they have and then just run with your vision.
Yeah.
And you'll finally have the support you need.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, Jay, is being part of a team, right? Is recognizing where your team needs that help and where can I do my job, right? And every successful team has guys and girls that do their job to make the overall team successful. And that's where, you know, for Smith Entertainment Group, I know where they need that help, and that's where I can do that job.
All right. Well, hopefully they're listening and they send you an email, offer you a job.
Yeah. Well,
and me too.
Like I
And me
said, I
too. while they're at it.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. If there's anything else you want to say, is there any other plugs you want to give right now, or anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think everything's been said right now. I like I said, I appreciate your time, allowing me to come on and talk and share. You mentioned it too. There's going to be many other podcasts, and that's where I'd love to be a part of it, because again, it's all about knowledge, education, and just making sure that that the NHL team is being successful, because there's nothing more that I want is to see Smith Entertainment Group be successful, to have the team be a successful franchise, and to continue to grow the game of hockey throughout the southwest of Utah.
Yeah, I'd love to see it have the effect on Utah that it had in Vegas, and
Yeah.
I don't see any reason. I think it'll be better, and you know, I'm not trying to disparage Vegas at all, because obviously they've done everything right. But I just think our owner has so much energy that he's going to find ways to do things a little bit better, and he's gonna see what Vegas did right, and he's gonna see what Seattle did right, and he's gonna see, you know, where mistakes were made, and I think he's gonna stay away from that and
Yep.
just make it.
Exactly. You know, you're spot, and that's where every great leader is successful, right? Is knowing where they failed previously, right? You know, there's a book out there, Failing Forward, understanding where you have, you know, fallen and not make that same mistake, but then also watching other successful people fall as well, because you haven't been on top unless you've fallen.
Right, right. I've fallen a lot. I'm just waiting for the on top part.
Well, that's the thing. You're always going to be on top of something else, but then you're always falling down from someone that you're trying to work your way up to.
Right, right. Well, Gabe, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yes.
And I'm positive we're gonna have you on again here shortly.
Yep. No, I'm pumped, Jay. Like I said, I appreciate you taking my phone call from the very start, and also thank you for doing what you're doing, man. Is giving everyone a place to listen and learn more about hockey and keep going, brother. It's awesome.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. And that is the Utah Puck Report. Hey, if you like what you heard today on the Utah Puck Report, make sure you review and rate it wherever you get your podcasts. Also, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Get involved with everything we're talking about. You can find everything on KSLSports.com, all of our previous episodes. I want to thank KSL Sports for letting us talk about hockey. I want to thank my producer and my boss, Madison Heekhouse, for supplying us with the rooms and taking care of everything hockey-wise. And just help us build hockey. Follow us, like us, and let's make this thing go. And that is the Utah Puck Report.